Hello, friends, and welcome to the Cinemondo podcast with Kathy and Mark and Burk, talking about movies. And, here's a filmmaker that we kind of like in a way. I have to tell you, this is a weird thing. One of the very first dates, or maybe it's the first date I ever had with my wife, was when we went to see Watchmen, which is a weird first date movie.
Yeah, but it's a big event.
But it's sort of one of those test movies because I really love Watchmen. I think that's a great movie.
Right.
But it's pretty heavy. I mean, there's a lot to think about in that film. But we're talking about Zack Snyder.
Zack Snyder, who did, of course, Dawn of the Dead, the reboot from 2004, which was such
good.
A
one of my favorite
film,
zombie movies,
and probably one of the best beginnings to a movie. The first 5 minutes is like, what? Because it felt so real. Like that's so how kind of the sense of it would be like, what is going on around me, but not to me. It was very much like that. They did 300 and Watchmen, and he got into all the DC films, and so he's had a career that I think started at his best movie, and then after that it's been sort of this up and down ride where his DC films are very dark. The Man of Steel and Justice League, they're all sort of Superman versus Batman, they're sort of not joyous films. They're very sort of dark and very CGI heavy and not really pleasant in a lot of ways. And then
I don't feel compelled to watch them again. That's my test of a good superhero movie. Do I want to watch it again? Is it sort of a comfort food movie like a lot of the Marvel films? I've seen them multiple times because they're just so fun to watch, but I never go back to those DC films.
But even the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy,
those I do go back to.
You can watch those. They're DC, but not really. It's kind of different. But Army of the Dead, what came out a couple of years ago, was a real missed opportunity.
I hated that so much because it was one of those, when you see a movie and you're excited because the trailer was spectacular, because it was basically the opening credit sequence of the film where they had a bunch of zombies in Vegas. They were like, kind of campy. One was an Elvis impersonator, and they're running amok amongst, which is a fun idea. Like, that is a fun idea. Then you find out that the fun idea is just the credit sequence, and then they go into this super boring heist movie and this big, ugly, destroyed city. Nothing to do really with Vegas anymore. Like, it was such a missed opportunity. Like, that's one of those, like, why? Like, why?
It could have been his Dawn of the Dead, because George Romero did the mall, so you get that sort of social, walking around, zombie people walking around the mall. So they could have done that with Vegas, but they didn't. So anyway, so this film,
like, why?
But this movie is
why, Mark? Why?
So Rebel Moon is the film, Zack Snyder's latest, coming out right around Christmas. So a big Christmas release. And Burk, you have some background on this, like what this script was originally, and so you can fill us in a little bit before we watch the trailer.
The way I understand it is Zack Snyder wrote or was pitching the idea of directing one of the Star Wars films. And so he wrote his treatment or his script for his Star Wars story. And evidently Disney turned it down or didn't want it or rejected or whatever. And, he didn't get the gig, but he'll be okay. And so he took that script, which he really evidently loved. He liked his idea, and he developed it, I guess, changed some of the names and turned it into his own thing. So it's kind of like his Star Wars movie, but it doesn't have the name Star Wars on it.
That's kind of been weirdly intriguing to me, like a kind of like this bizarro Star Wars world. But well, I haven't seen the trailer, so we'll take a taste and see what we think of it. So let's take a look at the trailer.
It's kind of what they're pitching it as, which is weird. I keep reading that in the promotion for the film and in any kind of discussion about it, and they're not keeping that secret. That seems like, if you had made this film and you were trying to promote it, it seems like that would be one of those things that you might want to keep secret. Like, I don't want to reveal that this was actually a Star Wars script that I wrote and got rejected. And couldn't find a home for it. And so I changed the name of it and changed the character names. And now I'm selling it back. I'm selling it to you as something else, like repurposing it. You'd think that he would want to keep that sort of down low and not let you know that he's repurposing some old trash that didn't get bought. You know,
he had full control. So he's like basically director, writer, producer, cinematographer. He basically does everything on this.
Yeah.
So in a way, he's got no one to blame, and he takes all the credit. So whatever happens, it's all on him.
But this was in the Star Wars universe. This was intended to be a Star Wars film with it had the Star Wars characters and locations and all that, but he just sort of mushed it around a little bit and put it out on his own. That's my understanding. That's what it seems to be they're saying in all the promotional stuff. So let's see if we can recognize any leftover Star Wars stuff in here.
I'm interested to see.
Yeah.
Let's check it out.
There's always a market for this kind of stuff. So
sure. Rebel Moon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Check it out.
And
do you know the story of the Princess Issa? In myth, she was called the Redeemer. It was said this child would stop the madness of war. That she was to usher in a new age of peace and compassion. I was given memories of a world I will never see. Loyalty to a king I cannot serve. And love for a child I could not save.
What do you think they want?
Everything.
I found her. Scargiver.
I am a child of war. I was taught that love is weakness. There is a difference between justice and revenge.
There is a price to pay for your defiance. Shh. One moment. I do love this part.
Hold on.
I don't want no trouble.
We're not here to bring any.
Are you ready?
You and I both know fear. Let's show them that we're not afraid. Let's show them we are more than the shackles that bind us.
A king is a man, and a man can fail. But a myth is indestructible.
The time has come for all that you love. Protect each other and show them no mercy.
Who among you is willing to die for what you believe?
Honestly, didn't hate that. I was getting actually more Game of Thrones than Star Wars. Honestly, I mean, yeah, there was some sabers, but it felt very Game of Thrones to
they
me.
forgot to take the lightsabers out, huh?
Well, you had that the dragon, or that whole thing.
The
was very
griffin.
much-
Looks
like
like
a
a
griffin. Sorry, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the second part is 2 parts, so I had a little bit of that, a little bit of Star Wars, a little bit of a slight twinge of Dune, maybe. I don't know, maybe because
Yeah,
it's a
some
2-part
Dune,
movie.
Game of Thrones, Star Wars mishmash.
So it feels very what's the word I'm looking for? Derivative
Familiar?
in that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
derivative.
It just to me, it just seems really familiar. It's like the styles and the design is like the production vibe of it just seems so familiar. It seems so, Star Wars, Dune, Game of Thrones ish. Like I didn't see anything in there that seemed like, wow, I've never seen that before. Like I felt with Dune, with the Dune film, I felt like there was production elements in there that I felt like, wow, that's new. That's something I've never seen. And this one just sort of seemed like the same kind of stuff.
Looked entertaining though. I mean, the guy can direct action. I mean, there's some beautiful action sequences. The production value looks pretty high. It's derivative, but I mean, I feel like Star Wars is so derivative to me in and of itself, with so many properties coming out and so many Star Wars things and series and movies. I feel like that's sort of just become a style to me more than even owned. So
that is true.
I think it's diluted itself.
Like if this was a Star Wars under the Star Wars canon, in the Star Wars canon, and it was just had to be a Zack Snyder series or something, we'd probably say, okay, let's see what he can bring to the Star Wars world. But since it's not, it's kind of adjacent to it. So you sort of look at it differently. Star Wars people will say, well, I'm not going to be into this because it's a failed Star Wars thing. But it could be on its own very entertaining. Who knows? I mean, I like Anthony Hopkins does the narration. Maybe he's in it. I don't know. Maybe he's not. Who knows?
It is him. Yeah.
And I do like Charlie Hunnam. Sofia Boutella looks great in the lead role. And I don't really know, like, is it a failed Star Wars or was it just production fell apart like so many things? Like, I'm not sure what the mechanics are for.
I don't know exactly.
Pitch it, don't know, but I mean, took it out, went to Netflix. Netflix said, "Yeah, take our money." So
well, and the other thing, the fact that it goes to Netflix says, "Okay, that's something I can watch at home on my big screen TV and probably be very entertaining." That kind of thing. So that kind of gives it a positive. So I'll give it a shot because I mean, I do watch all his movies, even though they're disappointing. But I do watch them because they are sort of big budget, sort of special effects laden, the genre that I'm into. So I do, I do watch them. I don't.
This looks a little grittier than Star Wars. A little like it's more desert ruins, and it just feels a little grittier in a lot of the stuff. But I mean, Star Wars has that too sometimes. But especially like some of the later stuff they've been doing with the series. But I mean, like I said, I could take it or leave it. I'm good. I can watch it. I don't, it doesn't make me, like you said, I may feel like, wow, I got to see this, but it is, I'm reluctant because I've been burned by Zack Snyder so many times lately with expecting, because he's got it down. He's visually is great, but sometimes the script or the perspective or storyline is just a no-go. It just is a waste of all these beautiful visuals. So if anything, it will be pretty.
And there's the thing that we see. It's almost like an appropriation thing, or like a sampling kind of a thing, like in music where you hear a new song, but it's got a sample from another song. So it gives you this familiarity, but that familiarity comes because you've heard that before. It's a part of another song that you're familiar with. And this one has that scene at the beginning where you see the hand person or robot in the.
I did like the design of that.
In the hand through the wheat, just like at the beginning of Gladiator. So it was almost like it's trying to make you remember Ridley Scott's Gladiator film, or is it a parody of that, or a?
But this time it's a robot doing it, so that makes it different.
It's a robot hand.
That's totally different.
I think I liked it maybe more than I thought because I liked Anthony Hopkins' narration, and I just feel that brings some sort of gravitas to the whole proceedings or something. So I'm going to watch it and hopefully really like it. But I'm with you, both of you, saying like how he's burned us before. Like Army of the Dead was just horrible and really bad, and so hopefully he'll turn around and make a good movie. I'll give
the cast looks great. It's got both. Speaking of like Game of Thrones kind of vibe to it, it's got both of the actors who played the character Dario in Game of Thrones. I think both of those actors are in this, which is interesting. And it's got Djimon Hounsou, who is always really good. He's great gravitas. He was in those Guardians of the Galaxy movies and a bunch of other stuff, of course. But he's got that intensity, He'll bring it up a bit, and it might be fun. Who knows?
We'll see. We'll
just felt
see.
I mean, my impression was I wasn't seeing anything that was new.
Yeah, maybe it was new when he wrote it 20 years ago, and there's been so many Star Wars shows since then that he goes, well, I might as well add it to the mix.
He's like, well, people seem to like this stuff, so I'm going to do one.
Well, it's kind of true when it goes directly to Netflix. It's sort of not going to be a something that people are going to the theater to pay $20 to. It's just going to be a Netflix release, which sort of puts it in a different sort of lower level, like Army of the Dead. That was a Netflix movie. Yeah. I don't know. He's kind of like the Adam Sandler of action films.
Oh my God!
They're doing the part 1, part 2 thing. They're letting you know that there is a part 2, and it's already got a name, so it's almost like they're producing them consecutively. Like he already knows that there's going to be a sequel. It's not like if this is successful, maybe there'll be a sequel. It's like no, there's already a part 2 in the works, and probably filmed them at the same time. Who knows?
Sure.
Well, I mean, I don't remember Heavy Metal, that animated series from the 80s. I mean, vaguely I remember it, but apparently he says this is based on that.
The movie Heavy Metal,
animated thing.
But the movie was based on the magazine Heavy Metal, which was a Americanization of Metal Hurlant, which is a French comic magazine that introduced Americans to folks like Mobius and
so I think that's sort of maybe why it's kind of sci-fi fantasy feeling. Like it doesn't feel pure sci-fi because like we were saying, the Game of Thrones fantasy angle, we were noticing that. We're calling it Game of Thrones, but I guess that's sort of like the fantasy aspect that there's a griffin in it, and that these guys look kind of like gladiators or something, and you see Roman columns and ruins. I mean, it just has that fantasy feel. So, well, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. You never know with Zack Snyder. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But he is basically did everything on this. So
it's his thumbs up or thumbs down.
All the creative control in the world. Yeah. Now we're going to see who he really is.
I'll watch it and we can talk about it later.
Check it out. Yeah. We'll review it. All right.
All right. Thanks for checking out the latest Zack Snyder. See you guys later.
Bye.